We're in bunting country here, so I thought we might start with something on Bunting, whom I met briefly a number of years ago. The title of this poem is actually Bunting's summation of himself, a minor poet not conspicuously dishonest. Nay, Bunting, a crafty poet, not conspicuously minor, into whose eyes no man entered, his smile a boy of 6. But what's the fox lurking in that look of wonder? Antipodes, slightly mad, had flushed his face, the hardy peasant. It's not going to come off as well. You want me to try it? Yeah, okay. A minor poet, not conspicuously dishonest. Nay, Bunting, a crafty poet, not conspicuously minor, into whose eyes no man entered, his smile a boy of 6. But what's the fox lurking in that look of wonder? Antipodes, slightly mad, had flushed his face, the hardy peasant. I understand country singers are pretty much alike in the United States as well as here. This is one of the Americana poems called The Country Singer. There ain't nothing special about me. Everybody knows I'm too fat and my legs are too short. I'm just a middle-aged cornball with a loud voice and a drinking problem. It's a funny thing. When I'm on stage, all I do is act like me. But I can act me like a son of a bitch. To a collie pup. Nobody had to show you where the sun is, or that my back could serve the same purpose as a tree. Why, you are hardly old enough to know the difference between your tail and a shadow. Yet the warm radiator and your bowl of water are already old friends. The way you look up at me with a saint in each eye, one would never suspect that you chase birds and chickens and steal stale bread from the neighbor's trash can. Lay off, you beggar. I just fed you and took you walking. Go spring into the autumn leaves, nuzzle and roll as if there were nothing in the whole wide world but fun. How is it that you play with my shoelace and understand so well how to love me? For this you shall have the key to my bedroom and the degree of Master of Arts. Do the same one now again?
Not now.
Not now.
We'll finish the list first.
All right.
I can do that one again. In your time,
Let me find the poem first. Young couples strolling by. When we get a good day here, the bee is at meridian, and little girls in worn-out slippers charm the adversary in the stranger's eye. Incognito then enters the coupling influence of the sun, licking an ice cream cone. And Swedes become Italians, and Italians become lizards, and Diogenes goes sailing. This is a stupid little poem which has made me famous throughout the United States because it has appeared on buses, so that I've gotten calls from Washington, from Chicago, New York, telling me that it's seen this little poem on the bus. The experiment with a rat. Every time I nudge that spring, a bell rings, and a man walks out of a cage, assiduous and sharp like one of us, and brings me cheese. How did he fall into my power? I'm not much of a drinker, but Madeira wine really has a beautiful color to it, and I was drinking a glass of it one day, and this whole poem came out of it. Although the poem gives the impression that I am quite a drinker. It's called The Glass of Madeira. Madeira, you have put me into a null state. Now I know what the Eskimo meant when he said the weather is our master. I know you want me in a kind of interval, or heavy water. Another glass and I'll be your placebo. Well, I feel no pain. I'll rest a while in this ancient limbic system. If I sit here long enough, I may figure out the gravitational pull of words, such as the sea is old, but the earth is older. The vine from which you came was brought from Cyprus by the Portuguese to the island of Madeira, where the green canary abounds and 695 species of beetles. The coast is rocky and the sea unquiet, hence there are few algae. The rock is basalt of volcanic origin, dark and hard. There are few meadows and pastures. The cattle feed on the mountains, and on the lower slopes there are few towns. This is said to reassure men of facts dragging an ass. Good Madeira, let me line your glass in the mellow quality of latency. Do not unlock us. The cubic light of a small planet left its source at the time of Prospero, iron red, and entered here. What time is this? The axis of the earth inclines. The fish swims to the hook. The old man plants a plum tree for his granddaughter. Profound Madeira, let me get some of this pressure off my bladder. I'm stoned. I don't know my backbone from a tuning fork. Don't anybody bump my arm or try to stop me. Undefinably deep and strange is this lighted enclave, this underwater amber, like the words of a philosopher with a taste for style. There is a mustard seed in the shape of the earth, but it doesn't matter. In this condition, it is easy to be deceived. The last words of Beethoven on his deathbed after 4 operations, too late, also look profound. until the reference was traced to a shipment of his favorite Rhine wine. Verily, I slobber over. It wouldn't surprise me if 4 mink dashed across this scene pulling an orange crate. I wouldn't bat an eye. What's the matter? Don't we peasants deserve to be entertained? I'm not going to budge from this love seat until Leah calls.
You're not here.
This is called the China policy. Of all the old times, I'll take Chinese poetry. A man could loll under a hemlock tree then, and muse, and nature be as wood to carpenters. A grouse ambling by, a sparrow hopping, nothing was of greater consequence. Such sweetness flowing as through a membrane through his limbs, the universe turned into a poet's enclave, the great society where simplicity is character, and character the common tongue, the representative of man. In those corrupt, bitter times, the most obscure clerk could attain clarity from these poems and his nature, and change into a superior man of exquisite modesty by simply looking at a heron crossing a stream. Instructions to the player. Cellist, easy on that bow, not too much weeping. Remember that the soul is easily agitated and has a terror of shapelessness. It will venture out, but only to a doze eye. Let the sound out inner mysterioso, but from a distance like the forest at night. And do not forget the pause between. That is the sweetest and has the nature of infinity. Lord, what is man? He looks into a glass and sees a physical figure looking back at him, the two waiting immobile for him to reappear as the world knows him by name, by work, by habits. In what particulars he is significant, and why should it be embarrassing to speak of this? In what endearing? Is he honest? And how he looks when meditating? All in a semblance characteristic as his bones, including that shade in the inwit of presence, is secondary at the subliminal portal that stands for more potentiality than appears. The quiet continent behind it, feeling boundless, the worse for him. The final scene, the only scene, inherent in glass, is that looker waiting for it to happen and caught in the act. The Glass of Madeira.
Excuse me, I don't mind it.
Here we go. Stand
Right.
by and in your own time.
The Glass of Madeira. Madeira you've put me into a null state. Now I know what the Eskimo meant when he said the weather is our master. I know you want me in a kind of interval, or heavy water. Another glass and I'll be your placebo. Well, I feel no pain. I'll rest a while in this ancient limbic system. If I sit here long enough, I may figure out the gravitational pull of words. Such as the sea is old, but the earth is older. The vine from which you came was brought from Cyprus by the Portuguese to the island of Madeira, where the green canary abounds and 695 species of beetles. The coast is rocky and the sea unquiet, hence there are few algae. The rock is basalt of volcanic origin, dark and hard. There are few meadows and pastures. The cattle feed on the mountains, and on the lower slopes there are few towns. This is set to reassure men of facts dragging an ass. Good Madeira, let me lie in your glass in the mellow quality of latency. Do not unlock us. The cubic light of a small planet left its source at the time of Prospero, iron red, and entered here. What time is this? The axis of the earth inclines. The fish swims to the hook. The old man plants a plum tree for his granddaughter. Profound Madeira, let me get some of this pressure off my bladder. I'm stoned. I don't know my backbone from a tuning fork. Don't anybody bump my arm or try to stop me. Undefinably deep and strange is this lighted enclave, this underwater amber, like the words of a philosopher with a taste for style. There is a mustard seed in the shape of the earth, but it doesn't matter. In this condition, it is easy to be deceived. The last words of Beethoven on his deathbed after 4 operations, too late, also looked profound, until the reference was traced to a shipment of his favorite Rhine wine. Verily, I slobber over. It wouldn't surprise me if 4 mink dashed across this scene pulling an orange crate. I wouldn't bat an eye. What's the matter? Don't we peasants deserve to be entertained? I'm not going to budge from this love seat until Leah calls. It's strange how you can read a poem twice and not the same way. I remember,
Excellent.
Right.
I think you should do. I wouldn't worry about going in tighter as well if you want. During it.
Just, you want to go in or?
Well, still here.
In your own time.
We're
Whatever you want.
recording now.
Whenever you're ready.
To a collie pup. Nobody had to show you where the sun is, or that my back could serve the same purpose as a tree. Why, you're hardly old enough to know the difference between your tail and a shadow. Yet the warm radiator and your bowl of water are already old friends. The way you look up at me with a saint in each eye, one would never suspect that you chase birds and chickens and steal stale bread from the neighbor's trash can. Lay off, you beggar. I just fed you and took you walking. Go spring into the autumn leaves, nuzzle and roll, as if there were nothing in the whole wide world but fun. is it that you play with my shoelace and understand so well how to love me? For this, you shall have the key to my bedroom and the degree of Master of Arts.
Thank you.
So, Carl, tell me what if you can remember, what motivated you to start writing as a boy?
Well, it's hard to say. It kind of just happened when I was 16. I was a freshman at the University of Chicago, and I was 2 years ahead of my time chronologically in the school system. So the students there were at least 2 or 3 years older than I. And there was a Japanese student in class there, a man about 40, who wrote the most beautiful haiku style of poetry. And there was a black student who was much older than I, who wrote a kind of Kipling poetry like Kipling. And
Okay, Carl, so can you remember all those years ago what motivated you to begin?
Well, I do remember exactly, in fact, because I was at the University of Chicago in 1919 and found myself in a class with two students who were writing beautiful poetry. One of them was a Japanese older man who wrote in a haiku style, and the American Negro wrote somewhat like Kipling, but a lot of life to it. And it just caught my imagination and started me off.
So, what you were associated with the Objectivist movement. So could you just actually explain what that is and how it came about?
Oh, God.
So you must have been asked that a million times.
Actually, the Objectivists were the result of Ezra Pound's badgering Harriet Monroe, the editor of Poetry Magazine. And there was only one poetry magazine in the United States at that time. And if you didn't get published there, you didn't get published, period. He was badgering her to publish some decent stuff because for at least 15, 20 years, the poetry there was really very insincere, sentimental junk. She finally gave in, and Pound had suggested Louis Zukofsky, to edit this issue. And Zukofsky simply selected those poets who at that time he thought were the best. And that's how the Objectivists arose, came together as a group in public. And the term Objectivist was one that was forced on Zukofsky because there were really different kinds of writing in this one issue. But Harriet Monroe insisted on some name for the group, and the best he could come up with was Objectivist.
It's very simple. So you stopped writing in the 40s, didn't you? Could you tell me why that happened?
Yes, there are a number of factors. One of them was that I had recently married, and a child was on the way. I was deeply involved in my professional career, which was that of social worker and psychotherapist. And there just wasn't time to write, do my professional work, which was very exacting. and write poetry. I tried to do that for a few years and found myself well, the things would come to me at night and keep me awake all night. I'd write all right, but I couldn't do my work then during the day. That was one thing. The other part of it was that I'd become a Marxist. And I was trying to find myself as a lyrical poet. And the Marxists, the American communists, they were really communists, connected with the Old Masses and the New Masses magazine, expected poetry to teach a lesson, you know. And I was enough of a Marxist in my thinking at that time to actually believe the communist, these communist ideas, and that was another element. But in the long run, even if it hadn't been for that, I might have had to stop. Now, William Cullis Williams, who was a doctor, kept on writing. He never stopped. And I think he was able to do it because as a doctor, it didn't involve his more physical in nature, his relationship to his patients. It didn't have the heavy psychological involvement that psychotherapy has. Anyhow, those are some of the reasons. It's a complex question.
Well, to complicate it further, I wanted to ask you about what you think the relationship between politics and poetry is, whether that poetry, politics should be part of poetry.
Well, it isn't a matter of should or should not. Anything can be the subject of poetry. The problem really is with political ideas getting into poetry is that these ideas are already formed in people's minds. And poetry, it's very difficult, therefore, for the imagination to do anything with these said ideas. And most political writing, therefore, tends to be banal and completely predictable. Now, some people like MacDiarmid, who are good enough to do this, can do it. But it's very hard to do.
Zukovsky did also to some extent.
I don't think so. Really, he talked about politics. It occurs in his work, but he's not a political writer. He has a section in which he shows his great, almost reverence for Lenin. But if he were living today, he would be very embarrassed at this, which shows how topical and how temporary political poetry can be. It can be ridiculous 20 years later.
Excuse me.
29 and a half. So that means you've got about 5 minutes left.
5 minutes left.
That's all right. Well,
I just want the answer maybe longer than 5 minutes.
okay. Well, we'll do it.
Do you want to continue or do you want to change the tape?
Change the tape.